Commander Zixval stood before the crystalline viewing port of the eternal knowledge, his iridescent scales reflecting the distant starlight as he watched the asteroid field dance before him. The massive rocks tumbled through space in their endless ballet, exactly as predicted by their quantum calculations. Everything was proceeding according to plan. "Status report on the distress beacon modifications," he asked, his melodic voice carrying the weight of centuries of scientific tradition. Behind him, 3 junior researchers worked furiously at their floating holographic displays, their delicate fingers weaving through the light streams of data. "The encoded signal has been refined to perfection, Commander," senior researcher Lin Ta replied, her phosphorescent markings pulsing with pride. "Only civilizations with at least Class VI quantum detection capabilities should be able to interpret it. We've specifically designed the harmonics to attract the attention of the more sophisticated species." Zixval allowed himself a small gesture of satisfaction, a slight ripple of his head crest that sent rainbow patterns cascading across the bridge. The Zentari Xenological Society had spent decades perfecting their methodology for first contact studies. Gone were the crude days of direct observation. Their new approach was far more elegant: create a situation that would draw potential species to them, then evaluate their responses under controlled conditions. "And our position?" he inquired, turning to face his crew. The Bridge of the Eternal Knowledge was a marvel of bioengineered architecture, its walls pulsing with living light that responded to the emotional states of its occupants. "We're maintaining stable orbit within the asteroid field, Commander," junior researcher Kix T reported, his youth showing in the excited fluctuations of his bioluminescent patterns. "Our gravitic deflectors are keeping us perfectly safe, though I must admit, these space rocks are rather primitive and messy." Zixval suppressed an urge to lecture the youngster on proper scientific detachment. The asteroid field was, indeed, chaotic by Zentari standards, exactly why they had chosen it. Any species capable of navigating this disorder while responding to their signal would demonstrate promising levels of technological advancement. "Begin transmission," he ordered, settling into his command pod as it adjusted to cradle his sensitive exoskeleton. The pod's neural interfaces hummed to life, connecting him directly to the ship's sensory network. Through it, he could feel the distress signal pulsing outward in elegant mathematical patterns, a symphony of quantum harmonics that would be irresistible to any advanced civilization's detection systems. "Signal broadcasting on all specified frequencies, Commander," Lin Ta confirmed. "The cultural assessment protocols are ready for immediate implementation once we make contact." Hours passed as they waited, the crew occupying themselves with various scientific observations. They catalogued the chaotic movements of the asteroids, documented the local star patterns, and updated their species' genetic profiles, all while maintaining the facade of a ship in distress. "Commander," Kix T's voice suddenly cut through the peaceful quiet, his markings flashing with alarm. "We're receiving a response." Zixval straightened in his pod, his scales shifting to attention patterns. Analysis. "It's strange, Commander." Lin Ta's markings showed confusion as she studied her readings. "The signal is incredibly crude by our standards. They're using what appears to be simple radio waves, but..." She paused, her confusion deepening. "They've not only detected our quantum-encoded beacon, they've somehow managed to deduce our location using primitive electromagnetic scanning techniques." "Impossible," Zixval declared, moving to examine the data himself. "No species using such basic technology could possibly." He stopped mid-sentence as new information flooded his neural interface. The approaching vessel's hull composition showed resistance to radiation levels that would dissolve Zentari ships. Its structural integrity suggested it regularly operated in gravity conditions that would crush their finest crafts. "Commander," Lin Ta's voice had dropped to a horrified whisper, "I've analyzed their transmission origin. They're from a Class XI planet, a death world." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in, They had intended to attract the attention of advanced, civilized species. Instead, their signal had drawn the interest of creatures who had evolved on a planet that the Zentari classified as permanently uninhabitable. Fascinating. Zixvel finally managed, his scientific curiosity warring with primal terror. It seems our cultural assessment may be more informative than anticipated. Through the viewing port, a new light appeared among the asteroids. The Deathworlders were coming. "Well, would you look at that?" Captain Jack Stone mused, leaning forward in his worn leather command chair. The bridge of the last call was a stark contrast to the pristine Centauri vessel, all sturdy metal, practical displays, and equipment that had been repaired so many times it was practically family. "Mike, what do you make of this signal?" Mike Rodriguez wiped his hands on an oil-stained rag before adjusting the engineering console settings. His dark eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. "It's weird, Cap. Way too structured to be natural. But it's got layers I've never seen before. Like someone gift-wrapped a distress call in quantum mechanics." "Quantum mechanics, huh?" Stone scratched his beard, where gray was starting to compete with brown. "Lucky, how far off our regular salvage route would we have to go?" Tom Davidson, known throughout the sector as Lucky for surviving 3 ship explosions and 1 space whale encounter, pulled up the navigation charts. His fingers, calloused from years of hands-on repairs, danced across the holographic display. "About 6 hours through that asteroid field. Nothing too nasty. Reminds me of that mess we cleaned up in the Kuiper Belt last spring." "Bloodhound." Stone turned to his security officer. Emma Hayes was already running the signal through her enhanced detection arrays, her cybernetic eye glowing softly as it processed the data. "Something's off," she declared, her military training evident in her posture. "Signal's too perfect, like someone's trying too hard to look sophisticated. Reminds me of those con artists from Europa, but with better tech." Stone nodded, a grin spreading across his weathered face. "So what you're all telling me is we've got a mysterious signal, a potentially sketchy situation, and a field of space rocks between us and whatever's out there. Don't forget the weird quantum readings," Mike added, now elbow-deep in an open panel, casually adjusting the ship's gravitational compensators. "My engines are picking up energy signatures that don't match any known configuration in our database." "Doc, you've been quiet," Stone called out to their medical officer, who was organizing her supplies with military precision. "What's your vote?" Ashley Turner looked up from her medical bay, visible through the bridge's rear viewport. "Last time we ignored something strange. We missed out on that cache of pre-war medical tech. Besides," she added with a predatory smile, "I just restocked my trauma kits." "Motion to investigate," Stone asked, though he already knew the answer. His crew wasn't just the best salvage team in the sector. They were explorers at heart, drawn to the unknown like moths to a fusion flame. "Aye," came the unanimous response, followed by the familiar sound of equipment being secured and systems being ramped up for potential action. "Lucky, plot us a course." "Mike, give me everything you can squeeze out of the engines without breaking too many laws of physics." Stone activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is your captain speaking. We've got ourselves a mystery signal and a rock field to dance through. Standard crash positions in 5. The last call's engines roared to life, their distinctive rumble vibrating through the hull. It wasn't the most elegant sound in the galaxy, but to Stone's crew, it was the song of home. The ship banked gracefully, its reinforced hull gleaming dully in the starlight as it headed toward the asteroid field. "Hey, Cap," Mike called out, reading a new set of data scrolling across his screen. "Just decoded more of that signal. You're not going to believe this, but I think we're picking up life signs that would make a tardigrade look delicate. Whatever's out there, they evolved in gravity that wouldn't even qualify as a light workout for us." Stone's grin widened. "Well now, isn't that interesting? Emma, break out the light environmental suits. No need to scare our new friends with the heavy gear." "Light suits." Lucky snorted from his station. You mean the ones rated for only 3 times Earth gravity and minimal radiation? Those are the ones, Stone confirmed, watching as the first asteroids began to grow larger on their main viewport. Let's not overwhelm them with our Sunday best. The last call accelerated smoothly into the asteroid field, its enhanced hull shrugging off micro-impacts that would have crippled less robust vessels. To the crew, the dancing rocks were less of a hazard and more of an interesting navigational puzzle. Anyone want to place bets on what we're flying into this time? Lucky called out, his hands flowing across the controls as he guided them through the celestial obstacle course. No betting, Stone ordered, then paused. At least not until we see what kind of trouble this actually is. Then all bets are open. The airlock of the last call cycled with a hiss that made the observing Centauri flinch. Commander Zixval and his crew watched in horror as what they assumed were heavily armed combat units emerged from the Deathworlder vessel. In reality, it was just Jack Stone and his crew in their light-duty environmental suits. "Mike, how's the atmosphere reading?" Stone asked, his voice carrying clearly through the suit's comm system. The engineer was already waving his handheld scanner in broad arcs, the device's gentle beeping a stark contrast to the Centauri's quantum sensing arrays. "Bit thin for our tastes, Cap. About 0.8 Earth standard. Gravity's barely hitting 0.7. Mike shrugged, the motion making his suit's reinforced shoulders rise and fall like armored plates. "Probably feels like a sauna to our new friends, though." The Centauri researchers huddled behind their biochemical shields, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in distress as they observed the humans' casual disregard for what they considered lethal environmental conditions. The fact that these creatures considered their current carefully maintained atmosphere thin sent ripples of unease through their scientific minds. "Greetings," Commander Zixval managed, his universal translator working overtime to match the humans' robust vocal patterns. "We are most grateful for your response to our distress signal." "Happy to help," Stone replied, reaching up to manually clear his helmet visor, a gesture that made several Centauri analysts wince at its primitive directness. "I'm Captain Jack Stone of the salvage vessel Last Call. This here's my crew." He gestured to his team, who were already spreading out with practiced efficiency. "Mighty fine ship you've got," Mike commented, running his scanner over a nearby wall. "Though your power distribution seems a bit overcomplicated. No offense." Emma Bloodhound Hayes was moving with predatory grace along the periphery of the chamber, her cybernetic eye whirring softly as it analyzed everything in sight. The Centauri's internal sensors struggled to classify her augmentations, which somehow managed to be both less and more advanced than their own technology. "Your vessel appears to be in remarkable condition for a ship in distress," she observed casually, though her tone carried a hint of steel. Several of the Centauri researchers began emitting stress pheromones that had their commander frantically signaling for composure. "We're experiencing cascading quantum fluctuations in our primary drive systems," Lin Ta attempted to explain, her carefully prepared scientific deception stumbling in the face of these unnervingly direct creatures. "Quantum fluctuations, huh?" Mike had already pulled out a rugged diagnostic tool that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts, which it had. Funny thing about quantum systems, they tend to leave distinct radiation signatures, even when they're supposedly malfunctioning. Stone watched the Centauri's color patterns shift rapidly, reading their body language as clearly as any verbal confession. Years of deep space salvage work had taught him to spot when someone was trying to pull a fast one, regardless of their species. "Doc," he called out, "what do you make of our new friends' biology? They seem a bit nervous." Ashley Turner was already consulting her medical scanner, her expression hidden behind her helmet but her amusement clear in her voice. "Fascinating adaptations for a low-stress environment, Cap. Their bodies literally aren't built to handle deception. Those color changes are better than any lie detector I've ever seen." Yum Kicks T, unable to contain himself any longer, burst out, "How are you even functioning?" Our sensors indicate your species evolved in conditions that would literally dissolve our molecular structure. Oh, that. Lucky grinned behind his visor, casually leaning against a wall that the Zentari considered too structurally uncertain to touch. Earth's pretty mild compared to some of the places we salvage from. Just last month we were pulling wreckage out of a gas giant's atmosphere. Now that was a tough job. The Zentari scientific equipment began registering multiple alerts as their carefully maintained composure started to crack. These creatures didn't just survive in Deathworld conditions, they actively sought them out for profit. Perhaps, Commander Zixfel suggested weakly, we should discuss the exact nature of our situation in more suitable surroundings. Sure thing, Stone agreed cheerfully. Though first, might want to explain why your damaged quantum drive is running a complex scanning sequence on my crew. It's not very polite to study folks without asking first. The Eternal Knowledge's conference chamber hummed with nervous energy as Captain Stone's crew made themselves comfortable on reinforced seats that creaked ominously under their minimal environmental suits. Mike Rodriguez had pulled out a battered thermos, the simple act of wanting to drink something in this environment, sending the Zentari researchers into a fresh wave of panic. Is that safe? Kix T asked, watching in fascination as Mike carefully connected the thermos to his suit's intake system. This? Just coffee, Mike replied, taking a long sip. Though Doc keeps telling me I should cut back. The caffeine content alone in that beverage would cause severe cardiac distress in most known species, Ashley commented dryly from her position near the door. Mike here drinks it like water. Commander Zixvel's scales shifted through several concerned shades of blue as he watched the humans casually discuss consuming what his sensors classified as a toxic stimulant. The situation had spiraled so far from their carefully planned cultural assessment that their behavioral prediction models had completely crashed. Look, Stone said, leaning forward in his chair, why don't we cut through the quantum interference and get to the point? Your ship's not in distress. You're running some kind of study, right? The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Lucky trying not to choke on his own coffee as he struggled not to laugh at the Zentari's obvious discomfort. That is, we? Kix T stammered, his youth and inexperience showing in rapidly flickering color patterns. Finally, unable to maintain the deception under the direct gaze of these predatory beings, he blurted out, "It's a cultural assessment protocol. We send out encoded distress signals to evaluate potential species for inclusion in the Galactic Federation based on their response patterns and technological sophistication." Kix T. Lin Ta's scales flashed in horror at the breach of protocol, but the damage was done. To the Zentari's complete bewilderment, Captain Stone threw back his head and roared with laughter. The rest of his crew quickly joined in, their amusement echoing through their suit speakers. Oh man, Mike wiped tears from his eyes inside his helmet. This is better than the time we found that automated research probe that thought Lucky was a new species of space whale. In the probe's defense, Lucky protested, I was wearing that experimental stealth suit. You mean this entire situation is amusing to you? Commander Zixvel asked, his confusion evident in both voice and color. Are you kidding? Emma grinned, her cybernetic eye whirring as it captured the Zentari's reactions for posterity. This is hilarious. You should see what our scientists get up to when they're doing field research. Remember that documentary about the guy who lived with space bears? The one who made himself a suit out of their shed fur to blend in. Ashley shuddered. Required 3 months of detox treatment when he got back. Still swears it was worth it. See, here's the thing, Stone explained, leaning back casually in his creaking chair. Humans have a long history of doing exactly what you're doing. We call it field research. Though usually we're the ones getting our hands dirty pretending to be part of the group we're studying. You deliberately place yourselves in hazardous situations for research. Lin Ta's translator seemed to struggle with the concept. For research, for fun, for profit, Mike counted off on his fingers, sometimes all three. There was this one xenobiologist who spent 6 months living in a volcanic vent to study extremophile bacteria, wrote a bestseller about it. The coffee table book version had amazing pictures. Lucky added helpfully. Commander Zixval's scientific training warred briefly with his disbelief before curiosity won out. Your species willingly subjects itself to extreme conditions to gather information. How else would we learn anything interesting? Stone shrugged. Though I got to say, your method's pretty clever. Probably works great on more conventional species. Unfortunately, Lin Ta admitted, her colors shifting to embarrassed purple, our previous encounters have been significantly more predictable. Most species either ignore the signal entirely or respond with expected diplomatic protocols. Well then, Stone grinned, looks like you hit the jackpot with us. So, want to compare notes on research techniques? I bet we could learn a lot from each other. The first warning came from Lucky's handheld scanner, its urgent beeping cutting through the friendly cultural exchange. But Cap, remember how I said this asteroid field was nothing special? I take it back. Stone was already moving, years of salvage work having taught him that Lucky's nothing special turning into something else meant trouble. Talk to me. We've got a rogue asteroid, big one. Must have been hidden behind that cluster we passed. Lucky's fingers flew across his device. Oh hell. Mike, you seeing this? Mike had plugged his diagnostic tool directly into the Zenturi ship's sensor array, ignoring their scientists' horrified expressions at his crude but effective interface method. Yeah, I'm seeing it. That's no ordinary rock. Impact patterns suggest it's got a metallic core, probably heavy metals. Mass readings are off the charts. Commander, Lin Ta's voice quavered as their own sensors registered the threat. Our gravitational deflectors can't handle an object of that density. How long do we have? Stone demanded, already calculating options. 3 minutes before it enters critical range, Lucky reported grimly. 5 until impact. This thing's moving like a freight train through butter. Commander Zixval's scales had gone pale. We must evacuate immediately. Our safety protocols won't get your ship clear in time. Stone cut him off. That rock's throwing off enough gravitational distortion to make standard escape vectors suicide runs. A predatory grin spread across his face. Looks like we get to do this the human way. Mike. Already on it, Cap. Mike was pulling equipment from his suit's cargo pockets, assembling something that made the Zenturi sensors shriek in alarm. Got 4 mining charges left from that gas giant job, if we position them right. Lucky, what's the rock's rotation? Complex tumble, but I can plot it. Give me 30 seconds. You can't seriously be considering. Commander Zixval began. Emma. Stone continued as if he hadn't heard. Get our magnetic grapples ready. The big ones. The ones rated for gas giant pressure. Emma was already moving. Now you're speaking my language. Your species is insane. Lin Ta burst out. Those mining charges will destabilize the entire local space-time fabric. Nah, Mike reassured her, still assembling his device. They'll just give that rock a really bad day. Though you might want to reinforce your structural integrity fields. This is gonna get bumpy. Stone turned to the commander. Here's the situation. We've got a rock big enough to crack both our ships like eggs. Running's not an option. Your fancy deflectors can't handle it. But what we do have is a crazy plan that might just work. He paused. Well, technically we have 3 crazy plans, but this one has the best odds. And those odds are? Kix T asked, morbidly curious. About 60-40, Lucky offered. 60% chance of success. Commander Zixval looked slightly relieved. 40%, Mike corrected cheerfully. But hey, those are better odds than that time with the space whales. Before the Zenturi could properly process this, Stone was already barking orders. Mike, hit those charges ready. Lucky, plot me a trajectory that'll give that rock something to think about. Emma, I want those grapples hot and ready the second we need them. Doc, trauma kits are prepped. Ashley responded professionally. Though I really hope we won't need them this time. Your ship, Stone addressed Commander Zixval, has quantum-level precise tractor beam technology, doesn't it? Ah yes, but... Good. Because we're going to need it. Here's the plan. We're going to hit that rock with everything we've got, in exactly the right spot, at exactly the right time. Mike's charges will crack it, your tractor beams will guide the pieces, and our grapples will make sure nothing gets too friendly with either of our ships. That's... Lin Ta's scientific mind raced through the calculations. Actually possible. Incredibly dangerous and completely against all safety protocols, but possible. Welcome to How Humans Do Science, Mike grinned, holding up his completed device. Sometimes you have to poke the laws of physics with a stick and see what happens. 2 minutes to critical range. Lucky called out. Stone's voice carried the calm of someone who had stared death in the face so many times they were on a first-name basis. Well, Commander, are you ready to do some hands-on research about how Deathworlders handle a crisis? The vast emptiness of space turned into a choreographed ballet of chaos as both ships' crews sprang into action. Mike Rodriguez floated in the void, magnetic boots anchored to the last call's hull, as he placed the mining charges with surgical precision. His movements, smooth and practiced, made the Zentari observers forget their terror long enough to be impressed. Charge 1 set. He called out, his voice steady despite the massive asteroid now visible to the naked eye. Lucky, how's that trajectory calculation coming? Got it mapped. Lucky's fingers danced across his console. Sending you the sweet spots now. Hit these points, and we'll split this rock like a ripe watermelon. Inside the eternal knowledge, Commander Zixval watched in fascination as his perfectly organized bridge transformed into something resembling organized chaos. Emma had somehow integrated their quantum targeting systems with her crude human technology, creating a hybrid tracking system that even their engineers admitted was ingeniously effective. Your tractor beams got amazing precision, she commented, making adjustments that their systems insisted were impossible. But you've got it locked down with too many safety protocols. Sometimes you need to let the hardware run hot. Running hot reduces operational efficiency by 37%. Lin Ta protested. Yeah, but it increases raw power by 80%. Emma grinned. Sometimes you don't need efficiency. Sometimes you need punch. Outside, Mike was placing the final charge when a smaller asteroid, destabilized by the approaching behemoth's gravity, spun toward him. The Zentari crew froze in horror, their sensors calculating 0 survival probability. Mike simply pushed off the hull, twisted in space like a gymnast, and used the incoming rock as a springboard to reach his next position faster. Thanks for the boost. He called out cheerfully. Charges set, he reported moments later. Ready to light this candle on your mark, Hap. Stone's voice carried across both ships' comm systems. All right, people, this is going to be tight. Commander, get your quantum fields ready. Emma, warm up those grapples. Lucky, the moment that rock splits, I want you to thread our ship through the gap like you're sewing a cosmic sweater. What happens if the timing is off? Kix T asked, immediately regretting the question. Then Doc gets to practice her hobby, Lucky replied with disturbing cheerfulness. She's really good at putting humans back together. Had lots of practice. Less chatter, more focus, Ashley cut in. I'd rather keep my medical bay empty today. The massive asteroid filled their view screens now, its metallic core creating gravitational distortions that made the Zentari sensors scream in protest. Stone watched it approach, his expression one of intense concentration mixed with what the aliens were horrified to recognize as enjoyment. Mike, get your behind back inside, he ordered. Time to see if your quick math holds up. My math always holds up, Mike protested, manually cycling through the airlock. It's reality that sometimes disagrees with it. On my mark, Stone's voice was steady as a rock. 3, 2, 1, Now, multiple events happened simultaneously. The mining charges detonated in a precisely calculated sequence, their explosive force focused by shaped fields that Mike had jury-rigged. The Zentary's quantum tractor beams, running far beyond their design capabilities, grabbed the splitting segments of the asteroid. The last call's magnetic grapples shot out, their enhanced power making them look like glowing spears in the void. Rocks cracking. Lucky called out, his hands becoming a blur of motion across his controls. Big piece coming right for us. Quantum fields at 130%. Lynn Todd reported, her voice a mix of terror and excitement. Sir, the system's never been tested at these levels. Welcome to field testing. Stone shouted as he engaged the last call's maneuvering thrusters. Lucky, show them why we call you Lucky. The human ship moved in ways that defied the Zentary's understanding of physics, slipping through gaps between asteroid fragments that their calculations insisted didn't exist. Emma's modified grapples caught key pieces of debris, using their momentum to sling them away from both vessels. You know, Mike commented as he worked his jury-rigged control panel, sparks flying from overloaded circuits. This would make one hell of a research paper. Practical applications of human emergency protocols in xenological studies. The aftermath of the asteroid incident left the Zentary's xenological database in shambles. Lynn Ta stared at her holographic display, watching as centuries of carefully categorized species data rearranged itself to accommodate the impossible humans. The processing core is requesting alcoholic beverages, she announced, her scales flickering in confusion. It's never done that before. Smart computer, Mike commented, now elbow-deep in the last call's engineering systems. He'd stripped off his environmental suit, much to the Zentary's continued horror, and was making repairs with casual efficiency. Maybe it's developing good taste. Commander Zixvel floated near his command pod, watching the humans work with a mixture of fascination and mild terror. Their ships had survived. More than survived, they'd succeeded brilliantly. But the implications were shattering every preconception his species held about technological advancement. I don't understand, he finally admitted. Your methods were crude, imprecise. By all our calculations, they should have failed catastrophically. Yet you not only succeeded but seemed to expect success. How? Stone looked up from where he was helping Emma recalibrate the magnetic grapples. You want the scientific answer, or the human answer? Both. Kix T interjected eagerly, already recording everything for what would become the most controversial research paper in Zentari history. Scientific answer. Ashley offered, running diagnostics on her medical equipment, is that evolution on a death world creates problem-solving patterns that favor rapid adaptation and multiple redundancies. We're built to survive when things go wrong. Human answer. Lucky grinned, is that if something's trying to kill you, you get really creative really fast about not dying. The Zentary's research vessel hummed softly as its systems continued cataloging the event. Traditional classification protocols kept trying to categorize humans as a primitive species based on their technology, then immediately contradicting themselves based on results. Your species, Lynn Todd observed, reviewing the data, appears to have developed along a completely different technological path than any we've encountered. You focus on robustness over precision, adaptability over specialization. Makes sense when you think about it, Mike said, sparks flying from his repair work. Hard to maintain delicate equipment when your planet keeps trying to murder you with everything from weather to wildlife. But your solutions, Commander Zixvel gestured at the hybrid systems Emma had created, which were still functioning despite violating several laws of physics the Zentari held sacred. They're simultaneously less and more advanced than our own. You've achieved similar results through entirely different methods. Yeah, we get that a lot. Stone nodded. Turns out there's more than one way to crack an asteroid. Speaking of which, your quantum field generators held up pretty well once we removed those safety limiters. The safety limiters that took our engineers 3 centuries to perfect, Lynn Ta noted dryly, her colors shifting to something approaching humor. Sometimes progress means knowing which rules to break. Emma shrugged, her cybernetic eye whirring as she documented the modified systems. Your tech's amazing, but you got it so wrapped up in safety protocols that it can't reach its full potential. The Zentari watched in fascination as the humans continued their repairs, their seemingly chaotic methods producing results that their most advanced diagnostic systems struggled to explain. Every now and then, one of them would pause to jot down notes or take readings, displaying a scientific rigor that contradicted their apparent casualness. You know what the really interesting part is? Lucky called out from where he was helping Mike. This whole thing started because you wanted to study advanced civilizations, and instead you found us, a bunch of Deathworlders who turned survival into an art form. Perhaps, Commander Zixval said slowly, his scales shifting through thoughtful patterns, we need to reconsider our definition of advanced. Your species has achieved space travel, quantum engineering, and artificial gravity through methods our scientists never considered possible. All because Earth didn't give us much choice. Stone smiled. When your planet's got everything from hurricanes to volcanoes, you either learn to adapt or you don't make it. We just took that same approach to space. The Federation's classification board is going to have a collective nervous breakdown when they read this report, Lin Ta predicted, watching Mike casually weld together components that their safety protocols insisted were incompatible. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation blazed with bioluminescent light as thousands of species gathered for what was supposed to be a routine membership evaluation. Instead, they found themselves watching in fascination as Captain Jack Stone and his crew stood before them, wearing what the humans called formal dress environmental suits, complete with clip-on bow ties attached to their helmets. Let me get this straight. The Federation's High Administrator, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, addressed Commander Zixval. You're recommending immediate inclusion of a species that solved a crisis by explosively dismantling an asteroid while simultaneously violating 13 different safety protocols. 14, actually, Mike corrected helpfully. We found another one in the fine print afterward. Lucky elbowed him quietly. Not helping, buddy. Furthermore, the administrator continued, their energy form flickering with what might have been exasperation. Your report suggests reclassifying their apparently primitive technology as an entirely new category of advancement. With all due respect, Commander Zixval's scales shifted to formal presentation patterns. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that our traditional classification systems simply cannot accommodate. They've achieved results comparable to our most advanced systems using methods we never considered viable. By hitting things with bigger hammers, a crystalline being observed from the council seats, sometimes metaphorically, sometimes literally. Stone agreed cheerfully, though Mike prefers to call it percussive engineering. It's a legitimate technique. Mike protested. I wrote a paper on it. The administrator's energy patterns whirled in what the more experienced delegates recognized as barely contained amusement. And what of their cultural evaluation results? Lin Ta stepped forward, her scales bright with excitement. Their responses defied every prediction model we had. When faced with deception, they responded with understanding. When confronted with danger, they treated it as an opportunity for practical research. They even improved our own systems while helping us study them. We just removed some unnecessary safety limiters, Emma shrugged. Your quantum fields work much better when they're allowed to breathe a little. They redefined what we considered possible, Kix T added, their youthful enthusiasm breaking through formal protocol. And they did it while making jokes about it. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The concept of treating crisis situations as learning opportunities was alien to most of them, yet the results spoke for themselves. Very well, the administrator's voice carried across the chamber. Captain Stone, do you have anything to add before we render our decision? Stone stepped forward, his environmental suit whirring softly. Just this. We're not here because we want to prove ourselves advanced enough for your Federation. We're here because the galaxy's a big place, full of wonderful and terrifying things, and we believe everyone's got something to teach and something to learn." He gestured to his crew. "Sure, we solve problems differently than you do. We come from a world that taught us to be ready for anything, to think on our feet, and to never give up when things get rough. But that's not just about survival. It's about turning challenges into chances to grow. And occasionally blow stuff up for science," Lucky added under his breath. "The point is," Stone continued, "we're not just Deathworlders who got lucky. We're explorers, innovators, and problem solvers who happen to be really good at surviving, and we'd love to share that perspective with the galaxy." The administrator was silent for a long moment, their energy form shifting through complex patterns. Finally, they spoke. "The Federation accepts Earth and its colonies as full members, with a special designation as Crisis Response Specialists. Furthermore, we're creating a new classification for their unique technological approach: adaptive engineering. Though we do recommend," they added, energy patterns flickering with what was definitely amusement now, adding a warning label to their emergency response protocols. "Caution. Human solutions may appear alarming to outside observers." "We can live with that," Stone grinned behind his visor. "By the way, has anyone looked at your Federation's emergency evacuation procedures? Because Mike's got some ideas about improving efficiency by about 300%. The sound of several thousand safety officers fainting barely disturbed the celebration that followed.